spiders? Seriously? No! No! Ah! No, I don't like you! Ah! Ah! Yeah! Eat it! Eat it! No, you didn't! Hey my fellow friends, it's Chris from Checkhead Gaming, and here's my review for Doom 3 VR Edition, developed by id Software, ported to PSVR by Archiac, and published by Bethesda. Doom 3 VR Edition releases March 29th, 2021, exclusively for the PlayStation VR, and retails for approximately $20. Of course, that depends on your region. Doom 3 VR Edition really needs no introduction, as it's freaking Doom, and if you don't know what that is, then your gamer license is being revoked. That being said, Doom 3 is an interesting, surprising, and kind of awesome VR treat, being that it's a 17-year-old game and often regarded as the worst entry in the Doom series due to its departure from the usual run-and-gun style of the series in exchange for a slightly slower-paced combat approach and horror game atmosphere, feeling more like Resident Evil meets Half-Life than a traditional Doom entry. Personally, I always liked Doom 3 and enjoyed the less hectic approach to its gunplay, so getting a chance to revisit this again with my aim controller in hand sounds like a damn good time in VR. Stick with me while I tear it down and see how it all turns out. As always guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more VR content from me, please consider subscribing. It not only helps out my channel, but VR gaming as a whole. And of course, if you don't want to miss a video, please make sure to hit that bell icon. Alright, graphics are up first. So yes, this is a 17-year-old game, so for once, the VR critics who like to say VR games often look like PS3 era graphics are actually right this time. Is that a bad thing here in Doom 3? No, not really. The truth is, many VR games, especially those made with lower powered hardware in mind, do tend to have muddy looking textures and can suffer from lower resolution visuals. Now, despite some upgrade to the guns, most of the assets and lighting here in Doom 3 VR remains much the same from any of the remastered BFG editions you may have played over the past few years. Fortunately, Doom 3 was a visual powerhouse back in 2004 when it first launched on PC and had some of the best atmospheric lighting of the time. The game can sure show its age at times, especially when watching character models during the in-game cutscenes, but the lighting engine here still shines and really makes for a creepy, immersive time in VR. Lauded by some but criticized by many when the game first released, Doom 3 is an intentionally dark game with levels often blanketed by thick shadows that hide enemies as well as valuable pickups. The end result is a game that requires the use of an in-game flashlight, which offers only limited battery life before needing to be recharged. Thankfully though, here in the VR version the flashlight is mounted to guns as per the remastered BFG version of the game, which saw the removal of the original version's standalone flashlight that was honestly just a pain in the ass. Personally, I liked the darker and more atmospheric approach to Doom 3 as it made for a much creepier gameplay experience than prior titles in the series. Additionally, for a game with dated textures and a tendency to be incredibly repetitive and samey looking throughout much of its 10 to 12 hour campaign, a problem that is somewhat remedied in the Resurrection of Evil expansion, the added mystery and nuanced atmosphere created by the game's use of lighting not only helps keep the game from coming off quite as bland and generic, but also helps to hide some of the VR port's less than incredible visuals. And I preface this VR port's visuals as I'm not even referencing the to be expected dated textures and animations of the source game. The problem that the Doom 3 VR edition has is that despite being an official VR port, it actually pales considerably when compared to the indie Doom 3 VR port by Dr. Beef that the Oculus Quest received just a few months ago, with the primary issue being that the PSVR port suffers from coming off significantly blurrier and with more jagged edges. Now, let me be clear, I'm not talking about the Quest's higher resolution display, as this is an in-game resolution issue in which this 17-year-old game running on effectively a powerful phone strapped to your face was significantly sharper than the Doom 3 running on a PS4 Pro or PS5. And I just cannot understand why. This is evidenced no better than by the fact that the PSVR version looks very sharp when in the 2D cutscenes and then drops so sharply when switching to the in-game VR portion, proving it is not simply a matter of the headset's lower display resolution at play here. Now this is never game-breaking, and it didn't distract too much from my enjoyment of being inside Doom 3 with a gun in my hand, but it was noticeable and at times quite distracting when even looking at the total ammo on my weapon was difficult to read. So here's hoping this gets rectified in a future patch, as as for those who have played the Quest port, you are likely to find the downgrade in visual fidelity here quite significant, and this just shouldn't be the case. Sound is up next. Having actually just played Doom 3, the BFG edition, only about a year ago on my Switch, and only a few months ago on the Quest, my takeaway on the sound side of things was that Doom 3, 17 years later, had a great creepy atmosphere that still holds up today, but suffers from pretty mediocre voice acting and a total lack of the awesome doom metal soundtrack. And well, some pretty craptastic gun sounds that honestly really hurt the overall experience, coming off weak, generic, and unexciting, even when compared to similar games of that era. Well, the voice acting still sucks, but whereas the Quest port of Doom 3 simply reused all the old sound effects, Doom 3 VR Edition for the PSVR has thankfully redone the weapon and impact effects, and the results are delicious. Sounding much more like the weapon sounds heard in the more recent Doom VFR than the impotent offerings of the original sound mix. And in a game like Doom, gun sounds are everything, as running through Doom 3 on the PSVR felt so much more badass as I ran down hallways, blasting bitches away from my shotgun and a smile on my face. A far cry from prior playthroughs where I found myself saying bang just to feel some excitement. These upgraded weapon effects are found across all weapons and cannot be understated how much of an improvement they bring to the whole experience of playing this game. And that brings us to gameplay. Doom 3, originally designed as a reboot of the series but later referred to as a prequel to the prior games, saw the Doom franchise shift a bit into a slightly more story-based survival horror mode, focused more on nuance and atmosphere and less on the bullet hell foundation that the series was based on. However, the BFG remaster saw the gameplay mechanic of sacrificing a readied weapon for a flashlight removed, bringing the game slightly more in line with its roots of being a shooter first. The PSVR version is essentially the BFG remaster, and as such also includes the additional story campaign, The Resurrection of Evil, a 5-hour chunk of single-player content that essentially adds more of the same, but with a few new enemies, new locations, and 2 new weapons, including the Grabber, a riff on Half-Life's gravity gun. In addition, the PSVR version of Doom 3 also contains the Lost Mission, 8 levels that were originally cut from the core game. Although note, the multiplayer from Doom 3 is now absent. Now, for all that Doom 3 tried to be different, it really wasn't. Sure, it felt a little more like Half-Life as you found yourself walking around the complex, talking to scientists and soldiers as you got a little story thrown at you. But none of it really matters. You're on Mars and hell is coming for you. As such, it's only maybe 20 minutes until you have a shotgun in hand, are finding keycards, opening doors, and running down endless hallways that all look the same, popping demons on your way. Sure, it's a little creepier, but you aren't going to be puzzle solving or getting a deep narrative. It's Doom, and honestly Doom 3 has never felt more Doom than it does here in the PSVR version. This is due largely to the fact that playing with an aim controller with the haptic feedback cranked up just feels like a match made in heaven, as both the game and the controller feel made for each other. I mean, you seriously need to experience for yourself what it feels like to be holding the minigun or a BFG in VR to fully appreciate how awesome this can be. This, combined with what I believe is a slight increase in the speed of the game, and this is for me the definitive version of Doom 3, as it simply feels more Doom. Now, Doom has never really been a game about aiming down the sights and going for those accuracy shots. Instead, it has always been more of a fire from the hip kind of game, where headshots mattered much less. This is a point that is wonderfully driven home here with the aim implementation, as most guns sit just perfectly with the aim tucked right back into your shoulder. This is made even more natural by the inclusion of the newly added laser sights to all projectile weapons, making Doom's signature run and gun style with the aim controller feel just right. Consequently, by removing the need to feel like you need to aim down the gun sights, this also has the added benefit of offering superior tracking of the aim, greatly reducing the drift that plagues many games with aim support. It's still an issue here, but much less so, and really only became an issue when the controller was at low battery. Now, for those not lucky enough to have an aim controller, fear not, as you can still play this with the DS4, as the game tracks the DS4 in much the same way as the aim, meaning you will still be physically aiming with the DS4 as opposed to using the analog sticks, something which I usually hate in PSVR titles, but I actually came to enjoy here in Doom 3 due to its lower slung gunplay, not forcing me to have my controller by my face, bending my wrists in awkward ways. Note though, there is no support for the moves. Doom can be played easily either sitting or standing, with a moderate amount of room being recommended. For those who suffer from VR sickness, this may not be a great game for you, as similar to Doom VFR, this is a fast-paced shooter, and while this does have blinders and click turning to help with that, it does not have the teleport function found in VFR. So if you don't yet have your VR legs, proceed with caution. And finally, that brings me to fun factor in my final review. Well, it's definitely time to dust off those aim controllers, because Doom 3 is fun as hell, one of the better utilizations of the peripheral, and a VR port I think few of us knew we wanted. That being said, it does suffer surprisingly and unnecessarily so on the PSVR due to an oddly blurry presentation that sees Doom 3 fare worse than the much more visually impressive Doom VFR a few years ago. Visuals aside though, Doom 3 sounds better than it ever has, and takes what certainly does feel like a dated shooter and gives it some much needed punch that the visuals don't. As you guys may know, I hate numbered review scores and instead rate games on a scale of buy it, burn it, or wait on it, along with some details on who this may appeal to more. Shooter fans rejoice, as it's been a while since we had a solid VR shooter to use your aim controllers on. This certainly isn't on par with the more recent Dooms, and it honestly doesn't pretend to be. Maybe Bethesda saw the fanfare over the Quest port of Doom 3 done by the very talented Dr. Beef and decided that they weren't going to miss out on that coin. Or maybe they too just realized that there was a perfect fit to be had for an older Doom game to be fully realized on the PSVR and its aim controller. Regardless, this is a very solid meat and potato shooter that delivers a ton of campaign content and all the weapons, demons, and violence you would expect from a game called Doom, and for a very reasonable price. This is a must-buy for shooter fans with or without an aim controller, as there is some good retro FPS fun to be had here. A testament, to be sure, for developers and publishers to seriously consider porting older games to the PSVR. I'm looking at you, BioShock. And that's it for me, guys. If you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more VR content from me, please consider subscribing. Thanks for stopping by and for your continued support, guys. As always, I'll catch you on my next video.